Welcome to the Keep It Or CHANGECARS podcast. It's quite clear that I'm not Nikki Netchefefe. However, my name is Michael Pashut. I'm the proud owner and founder of ChangeCars and host of the TV show All Things Motoring. Today, joining me are two people who are clearly not camera shy. Alan, you're the co-host of the Keep It Or CHANGECARS podcast. Welcome to you.
Thank you. Well, I'm the co-host as of today.
Absolutely.
First time as the co-host, which I am so excited about.
And super proud to have you on board.
Thank you.
And then another gentleman, Francisco Nwamba. To anybody watching, to anybody listening, if you don't know the name, you haven't been watching Ignition GT. Francisco, former host of Ignition GT, but you've got a new position now, and I couldn't be prouder to hear you say it.
It's Head of Content and Brand Awareness at All Things Motoring and ChangeCars.
Yay.
So everything aligned beautifully, and myself and Michael have now, started working together, and it's been an absolute pleasure because it feels like I've known Michael. I mean, I've known Michael for a good month now, but it feels like I've known you for like 10 years.
It's just over 3 weeks.
True, very true, very, very true.
Well, Francisco, at least we go back.
Yes.
Okay.
10 years now.
About 10 years, yeah. That we met up doing a defensive driving course.
Yep.
And we've kind of always connected along the way ever since.
Very true.
Yep.
I was much skinnier then, and unfortunately, I don't think I'll ever get back to that part of my life.
I'm not commenting on that subject, okay.
What he's trying to say in a different way is happy wife, happy life.
There
Gentlemen, today we've got so much to talk about. One of the things that I don't do, like you do, Alan, Francisco, yourself as well, you get to go to a lot of new car launches. I'm a lot more office bound than both of you. This weekend, something incredible happening in Johannesburg. You're up for Festival of Motoring?
Yes. Festival of Motoring, it is going to be a big one. I look at the brands that are going to be there. I think it's going to be bigger and better than last year's one. And I mean, it's always exciting. It's always nice to be around people who love cars, because in the car launch space, it's very much about your colleagues, your journalists. But when you're dealing with the public, it is very enjoyable.
So without saying the right thing, Alan, 2022 was my first Festival of Motoring. I was blown away. 2023, I thought it was immeasurably better.
It was way better.
100%. But we're talking about a solid show in 2022, a magnificent show in 2023. 2024, you're attending some launches, so you're not going to be able to attend.
Yeah.
However, you're in good hands. The show's in good hands. Francisco, what are we looking to cover this weekend?
Everything, all things. So, all things Abarth, all things BMW, all things Bentley, all things Citroen.
Please don't interrupt Francisco when he's on a roll. He's going to go from A to V. You're only on B. Carry on.
All things Mercedes, all things that. So the whole aim for us is to cover every single stand that is there, to talk about the brand, to talk about the passion behind the brand. And what I love about what we do here is that it's not just about the review. It's about the actual brand, the history, because that's actually what resonates with a lot of consumers. And that's my most refreshing thing about getting a little bit out of the review space and actually speaking to the brand, speaking to what people like, because it's not just about this has got hard plastics, this doesn't have this. It's what it makes you feel and the emotions behind it. So
Alan, you're truly a seasoned journalist. You've been doing this for many years. If anybody hasn't seen Alan's reviews, truly, then you don't know the internet exists. You're talking about a man who gets reviews out quicker than anybody. But Francisco came up with a concept that I'm absolutely proud to say I endorse. But before we talk about the concept that we're going to endorse, for you, what is the latest vehicle that you've tested?
Well, right now I've got the Kia Sonet, the recently launched new version of the Kia Sonet, the 1.5 petrol model. It's an interesting car. Can I put it that way? Francisco, I don't know when last you've tested Kia. Their speccing is somewhat strange. I like the car. It's nice. But for the car, for the price, it's got certain features you expect, and it's missing one or two you expect, and then it's got some you don't expect.
Does it have aircon?
It's got a decent aircon system. No, it's got all those things, but they're just one or two little things that I look for in a car now at that. And you're talking, it's the lowest spec version, so we on, can I call it just under 400,000 Rand? And they're just one or two things I would have liked to have seen on the car. But it's nice. The other thing is there is also the 1-litre turbo version, which as petrolheads, we'd all rather have that one because it's just got a bit more oomph on it.
If you're living in Gauteng, and Francisco, you've just moved down to Cape Town, is it fair to say that if you're living in Joburg, a small non-turbocharged engine for me is always not ideal? I just would not do it. A 1.4, 1.5 litre, I'm on record as saying, Suzuki, listen to me nicely. You've got the most incredible car in a Suzuki Jimny. Just remove that sewing machine engine and put in a 1 litre, 1.2 litre, 1.4 litre turbo. Borrow it from whoever you like.
Yeah.
Make your own. What do you think of that point?
You're very true. You're very, very right. Very true. You're very right.
I've heard that before.
Very true. Very
But
right.
normally they say you're very righteous. But thank you
Okay,
for
I
the
like
kind
that.
compliment.
I like that.
Can I jump in before Francisco answers there? Suzuki in Europe have a 1 litre turbo, and in South Africa,
Yeah.
they do have the 1.4 turbo in the Swift Sport. So they are there. They're going to tell you it's about price.
Of course.
That's going to be the answer.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Suzuki fan, and the sales figures show that I'm not unique. South African public is huge fans of Suzuki, and with good reason. But when I drive that Jimny or any normally aspirated small engine, and for me a small engine is 1600 or below today, it's just gutless.
Yeah.
It makes it an unpleasant experience.
Yeah.
So to Suzuki South Africa, free advice. 1 litre turbo, 1.4 from the Suzuki Swift Sport. They'll call it the Suzuki Jimny Sport. Can
Absolutely.
you imagine a whole different
Yeah.
breed of buyer?
You know, that would sell like hotcakes
Yeah.
because already you get the guys who like spruce up their Jimneys. They put the little G-Wagon kits on them. So if it had a bit more power, I think it would make a lot of sense. And it's interesting that moving now to the Cape, I actually drove a Kia Picanto recently, and that had that small little 3-cylinder, normally aspirated engine. And I immediately thought that was going to be a bit more gutless, like you say, because I'm used to that here. And I was quite surprised. I was like, 18%, 14%.
Yeah.
It makes quite a bit of a difference when you're the right altitude.
So I believe they say it's 17%. I don't think there's
I've
any...
always heard the figure 18, but I'm not going to.
Are we going to argue over 1%, my good friend? Eh?
Not with you, Mike.
Thank you. But 17%. I mean, if you take a vehicle that's got 50 kilowatts, that's an extra 15 kilowatts, just roughly working on 15%. And that is massive.
Yeah.
That is massive.
Well, also, just as an aside here, I was 4x4ing recently and I came across a Jimny. The guy had transplanted a Vitara 1.6 engine
Are you serious?
into a Jimny.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure he must have, were you off-roading? He must have been owning those courses.
Unfortunately, I saw him like at a stop.
Okay.
I didn't match, but he was very proud of this. And according to him, and I'm not arguing, it fitted in with no major,
Interesting.
body work or anything like that needed.
We're definitely onto something about a turbocharged Jimny because that thing would actually be a game changer. 5-door
Absolutely.
turbo,
Oh, yeah.
perfect.
I look at everything about the Jimny. It looks good. I mean, it's a small vehicle, but it's one of those vehicles, if you're a young man, if you're a lady, whoever it is, you like to go off-road, you like to use it as a second car, fantastic. My problem, and I'll say it again and again, when I want to go away, I want to leave Johannesburg, and I want to drive somewhere 200 kilometers. They say you want to enjoy the journey. I cannot imagine you can enjoy the journey in that car.
You can. Can
As
I
a
tell you why?
passenger.
No. Do you remember?
Sleeping.
Do you remember the
Tell me when I've got it.
the TV show Going Nowhere Slowly?
Now, Francisco, you've joined the brand All Things Motoring. I can see you smiling. You've come up with a superb concept. Sometimes they say you had me at hello, you had me at... You got it. Tell us about All Things.
Firstly and foremost, I must say, Mike is just making me look too good here. It's a joint concept. I'll say, not my concept.
Okay.
But the idea is a brilliant one in that we've always spoken about how the public is the most important person we need to consider in this automotive space. And what I've seen is, especially how the media landscape has changed in the last few years, a lot of the new age media, we focus a lot on ourselves. I mean, it's natural. We come from the selfie generation. But then we end up forgetting about the public.
Sorry, I come from the 70s and 80s. we didn't even know what a selfie
I'm not
was
talking
in
about where I
those
come
days.
from, okay. But can
50s and 60s is just another podcast. Isn't it? That's classic cars from the 50s and 60s.
Yes.
But
yes.
got to just correct you on one little thing there. You're mentioning journalists. No, the new era is content creators.
100%. 100%.
Not journalist, I'm sad to say, has almost died out.
That's the thing. And
Yeah.
that's exactly where this concept comes in so beautifully. Because nowadays, where do you take in most of your information? It's on your phone, it's on your PC, but it's actually generally on your mobile device. So if we look at traditional mediums, normally a brand brings out a press release. They want to tell us something about their product. We have to wait for a journalist to maybe on the off chance, pick up something and then maybe write about it. And if you look at the demographic of who's actually in that media landscape today, there's actually no one who's really utilizing those press releases and things about the brand. But there's Alpha fans out there, there's BMW fans out there, there's Citroen fans out there. I mean, the quirky ones. I mean, I'm one of them. I like a Citroen.
I love the Citroen.
Lovely. Just had the new C3 Aircross.
100%.
Went back 2 days ago.
100%. So what we want to do now with All Things is create a hub where you can find all the relevant information that you want to get pertaining to your brand. Stories from the brand, stories we've shared ourselves, and any information, but at the same time, take it a step further, allow you to communicate with the brand, allow you to be able to book a test drive, allow you to be able to purchase the vehicle that you're looking at. We already know the success that ChangeCars is on the pre-owned side of things. Now imagine a scenario on the new car side of things where you don't even have to now leave and go to a dealership, because the same way we talk about how journalists are dying, I sold cars as one of the first jobs that I did, first proper jobs I did before selling biscotti.
I didn't know you were a used car salesman, Francisco.
New cars, can you believe it? I did new cars, yeah.
That lifts him one or two.
Yeah. One or two notches. I was terrible, by the way, at it. I still have funny stories of how bad I was at that job. But it's amazing how a lot of consumers complain about the fact that even sales executives, that job is dying out. So this is where we come in. We want to be able to empower consumers with the right information, with the right knowledge that they need about that brand, and even for people who just want to know what is going on. There's the latest Toyota here, there's that's happening in the automotive space. We want to make it easy for consumers to reach that information and also for the brands to communicate to the consumers as easily as possible. So the idea is all things, everything. Anything that's pertaining to the automotive space, whether it's off-road, whether it's a Bath, whether it's Ferrari, it's Lamborghini, it's all going to be there on one platform.
I just loved hearing that so much. I want to ask him to repeat it, because I'm going to pretend I didn't hear it. I just love hearing all things literally from the proverbial A to Z.
Yeah.
I normally say from A to V when it comes to vehicles. Have you heard what I say about Alfa Romeo? A brand in South Africa that nobody talks about. They always say you buy an Alfa with your
Hot.
And what is my famous saying?
You can't make it up?
Have you ever heard anybody having a head attack?
Exactly.
And that's why
exactly.
you buy an Alfa Romeo.
And you know what Jeremy Clarkson said?
A lot of controversial stuff.
About Alfa Romeo. That you cannot call yourself a petrol head until you've owned an Alfa.
So that's interesting. So
Yeah.
Jeremy Clarkson,
Yeah.
absolute legend. Is he a fan of the Alfa brand?
Absolutely.
Stellantis,
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo International. How are you not getting this out there? If Jeremy Clarkson likes it, who can't like it?
Yeah, that is very
But I
true.
want to challenge you on something else here quickly. You always say Alpha to Volvo, right? I've heard you use that many, many times. There was, and it's escaped my memory, and that's bad, I know.
Tells you how long ago it was. So it's irrelevant.
There was a Russian brand that they sold in South Africa for a very short
Lada,
period.
LADA.
No, not Lada. There was one with a Z. Anybody watching, please let us know, because I'm telling you there was one. It was probably in the mid-90s, somewhere around there. I want to know which one it was.
I've got a good comeback for you. The struggle is real. But it's interesting. I mean, Russians.
Yeah.
250 million people in Russia. You look at the Chinese market. I mean, just talking about Russia came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Why is the Chinese vehicle market so successful? You've got 1.3 billion of your own consumers that whatever you turn out, quality will be bought locally, by local.
Yeah.
You take the Russians, you take the Americans. When you think of cars in South Africa, I don't think of Jeep as an American vehicle. Do you think of Jeep as an American vehicle?
No, Jeep has become a worldwide brand. now,
100%. What is an identifiable Russian vehicle? It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
How is that possible? You're in Europe. You're close to Sweden. Yes, Volvo is the only Swedish brand. But why is there no Russian brand starting with a Z? That's what I want to know.
Well, there's Lada, but then again, what's the Lada Niva based on?
A 1945 failed design by some other manufacturer. Is my
Close.
best
Close,
hit.
a 1960s design from Fiat.
That's incredible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And for anybody who wants to investigate, in 1960, I assure you, Fiat was not exactly a world leader in car design. But talking about car design and the future, we always say the Chinese are here to stay. I believe they're here to stay deservedly. Francisco, 2021, I remember going into an interview. I was about to go on TV.
Yeah.
And I got a call, pure coincidence, and a gentleman phoned me and said, Michael, you've known me for many years. I trust you. What do you think of the new Cherry Tiggo? My words to him on record were, whatever you do not touch it. You're going to be massively disappointed. It's going to be another failure. I go into studio. I speak to two well-known people. We get talking. I said, you know what's crazy? I just got a call from a gentleman asking me, should he buy a Cherry? And I just told him no. Adam Ford, I remember you said to me, no, Michael, we've just been to the launch. This is a car that is going to be a huge success. When the TV interview was over, I phoned the gentleman. I said, I got this one wrong. I'm not ashamed to say I got it wrong. The future of Japanese brands in South Africa. Your opinion, Alan. Are they here? Are they in trouble? Are they here to stay? Or are they in trouble?
There's a divide. Toyota in South Africa,
Yeah.
they're not going to get toppled for a long time to come.
Of course.
They, 25% market share?
11,000 cars last
Yeah,
month.
correct.
Yeah.
So
And again, I
they're-
always say
yeah.
deservedly so. Sorry to interrupt there. I always say deservedly so.
100%
However,
agree.
I will guarantee you every single brand in the world is looking over their shoulders. Because if they're not, if you don't see what's coming up in your rearview mirror, however, of the Japanese brands, there was a specific reason I asked, Toyota, I would say, are the most immune. I use the word deservedly so again. The best quality, the best resale value, the best dealer network. When it comes to Toyota, there are over 200 dealerships across South Africa. If there's a town, there's two things in that town. There's a Pep store and there's a Toyota
The
dealership.
third thing, a bottle store.
As a non-drinker, I never thought of that. But as someone who had a child, I know there's a Pep store. Your personal feeling, Francisco, regarding the Japanese brands in South Africa, who's at risk?
So I would say, if I look at, we spoke about Nissan, and I think one of the big knocks they've taken is the NP200. I mean, that is a vehicle that has, solidified a lot of small businesses. It serves so many purposes, and it's left a bit of a void in the automotive space.
But it's
total void,
crazy
yeah.
beyond crazy. So there was a vehicle that was recreational. There was a vehicle that was a pure workhorse for your electricians, your small maintenance guys. How do you take your bestseller purposely and say we don't want to produce it anymore? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I've heard, and I'll repeat that I've heard that what was actually done, or what actually happened there was obviously a parts supply problem because it was such an old vehicle that was an issue. They had sourced a replacement from Russia
Oh, interesting.
until the Ukraine war started.
Wow.
And that's killed their plans and has left them with a big hole, literally. So that's apparently the kind of backstory for it, can I put it that way?
But you take Nissan as a brand. Nissan is proper mainstream. Toyota's mainstream, Mazda's mainstream, Nissan, Honda, etc. Nissan have got 4 products in South Africa today. The Patrol, where they sell 2 a month across the country.
Yeah. Too expensive as
Yeah.
well.
The X-Trail, that is too expensive. How many do they sell X-Trails? So they've got 2 cars. A Magnite
Yeah.
and what else?
The Navara.
And the Navara.
Yeah.
The Navara, double cab, a very decent vehicle.
Yeah.
Definitely behind the times in terms of the latest technology. But talk about the Navara. What other Navara do you get?
You do get the single cab, etc., etc.
Who knows that the Nissan Navara single cab exists?
Yeah, that's so true.
The Ford Ranger single cab. Fleet companies are buying them. Toyota Hilux, I think they sold a few vehicles since 1969 in South Africa.
Do you know that just last month, double cab, Ranger outsold Hilux? Double cab.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Was there a shortage of Hilux in the market?
No, I don't have exact numbers, but you will find that on double cab. Yeah, overall, Hilux sells 3,000 to Rangers 2,000
Yes,
month after
but
month, right?
specifically the one niche component.
But the double cab segment is on a par, and the Ranger actually does beat the Hilux more often than you may think.
Incredible, incredible. But just quickly getting back to Nissan, how are they competing? What do they have in any facet that is standout? So when you talk about Toyota, we always talk about the reliability, we talk about the resale value. You talk about the Hilux. It's the mainstay of the South African bakkie market. In what category do Nissan feature?
It's a little bit nondescript, isn't it? And I think it goes back to that whole engagement with consumers, because it's quite sad that this is a brand that does have, gravitas back in the day in South Africa. It's not like they don't have a heritage. So, and you mentioned how the Navara has now become a bit long in the tooth. It's a bit outdated. I remember going to that launch when that 5 multi-link suspension was launched. And, they had an opportunity to really just shoot the lights out, but you rest on your laurels and then you end up falling behind.
I heard yesterday that there is something coming on Navara within the next few months. I have no idea what, but there's apparently something. So maybe they have been listening. Let's give them a little bit of credit.
Fair enough.
I've got to take you back to something, though. There's one other Japanese brand that we forgot to mention that's also a success story.
Suzuki.
Exactly. Can't leave them out when we separating the successes from the ones that aren't working.
So let's use a simple example. When you know you're doing marketing right, I go back to the Chinese brands. We always thought of Chinese as inferior. If you say to anybody in South Africa, the average motoring person, name 3 Chinese brands, I promise you they'll rattle it off. They'll say Chery, GWM, and Novell. Even though GWM and Novell is essentially the same company, they've got 2 different components. But people will rattle that off. If I say to people, I've done it, name me 3 Japanese brands in South Africa. Toyota, tick the box. Suzuki, as a general rule, yes. No one can name a 3rd Japanese brand. They don't say Nissan, they don't say Honda, they don't say Mitsubishi, they don't say Mazda. What does that tell you? It's very simple. Drive on any highway in South Africa. What billboards for cars do you see? Medium size, middle of the range. If you drive on the N1 highway, Joburg to Pretoria, you'll see Chery, you'll see a Moda, you'll see JQ, you'll see Jet Tour, all the Chery brands. When last did you see a Mazda or a Nissan or a Honda advert on a billboard?
That is so true.
1990s? Do you remember the 28th of July, 1997? I remember it like yesterday. If I say to you, Francisco, make a prediction, because I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Which brand in South Africa, a well-known brand, we've mentioned it, 3 years from now, will not be in this country. And not because I don't like the brand, just because the brand cannot survive in this market. The market's going to get harder, not easier. And everything is about what are you doing to arrest the decline. These brands are doing 0 to arrest the decline. You make a prediction which 3 brands are in trouble and which one won't be here.
It's a tricky one. Yeah, it's a tricky one. You rack my brain quickly, because I didn't actually, a few years ago I was concerned before, and I know it's not a Japanese brand, Swedish brand, Volvo. At a point, I was quite concerned before they went into this whole electrification thing.
They turned it around.
They turned it around last minute. There was a period of time when they had just S90 and the XC90, where I was looking at those sales figures, and they were selling 8 units of this and 9 units of that. And I thought, oh no. And then we went through that period of time as well with some of the FCA products, with Alpha and all that, where we thought, maybe this is going to be touch and go. But like you said, they've started to turn it around. Alpha, I never thought about that, but Alpha could be, what is Alpha? How many cars does Alpha sell a month?
Every month is a strong word. Why don't we use every quarter? I do not know, but the number must be literally under 20.
Yeah.
It's minuscule.
Yeah.
In many, many ways, and I like the brand. I truly like the Alpha brand. I mean, going back to my joke about you buy it with your heart, you buy it with your head. It's a lovely brand. But that brand has got no place in South Africa.
Yeah.
But regarding the Japanese brands, the one that I say to you, the 3 that are in trouble, Honda, Mazda, and Nissan. I'll make a prediction in the month of September 2024, you heard it from me, with no malice, that one of those 3, if not more, will not be in South Africa in the year 2027. Who's your money on?
Okay. I hope that Nissan first will not disappear, and I have a certain reason, which is job creation. They have a factory plant here. If they go, you're talking a couple of thousand jobs.
Of course.
That is going to hurt more than anything. They are, like most of the local manufacturers, pushing into Africa. And they're putting a lot of effort. They did that trip up Africa, the Daring Africa expedition recently, etc., etc. So maybe, looking at a slightly bigger picture, they're focusing on the rest of Africa and not as much on South Africa. I think that's what's happening there, because if they're only going to build Navara here at this point, they've got to have a market for it.
Of course.
Yeah.
And Africa is a good market for a vehicle like the Navara. So let's hope that that doesn't happen, okay? Honda and Mazda, the problem I have with both of those is they've both got such good products.
Exceptional products.
Yeah.
Exceptional
And now,
products.
how do we lose a brand? Yeah, not so much now, but in the past there were brands that had products that were not as good as the others. And so what if one of them vanished?
Of course.
I would hate to see any of them vanish. I'm sorry. Mazda, that new CX-60.
Magnificent. That
Yeah.
3.3 litre diesel
Diesel,
engine.
yeah,
They've
with
got
hybrid,
the
yeah.
right engine
Yeah.
in that car
Yeah,
now.
it's the only diesel hybrid. You know that? Yeah.
On the record, I didn't even know it was.
Yeah, to be honest, I just thought it was a different. I thought it was the only
Yeah.
one.
No,
Kind request to the incredible editing team, take that out.
sorry.
But what kind
Yeah.
of kilowatts would that be pushing out? then?
187.
That's
Yeah.
the right number. Because when that CX-60 came to South
Yeah.
Africa, it came with what engine? Petrol only?
It was the 2.5
Yes.
petrol.
gutless.
No,
Normally
it was
aspirated engine, wasn't it?
naturally aspirated,
Yeah.
2.5. I think what happened, first of all, obviously, because our market is so small, you now are bringing the cars in. Do they care about sending where you're going to sell 20 or 30 a month to this country when they can rather send 1,000 to Europe? So there's the considerations on getting stock to this country. The other thing I think, and this is not from Mazda, it's my opinion, is they brought that one in at 850. The 3.3 is about 1,050,000.
Yeah.
If they had launched the CX-60
In the diesel.
at over 1 million, everybody would have said, "Are they nuts?" Because I mean, the top CX-5 was in the mid 600s, so they were already jumping. Yeah, their price categories as well as everything else. They were already into new territory at 850.
Yeah.
I think there must have been some strategic thinking going on there, saying we can't suddenly drop $1 million,
Yeah.
$1 million rand car. Everyone will think we're crazy. So I think they softened the blow a tiny bit by doing it that way around.
Very, very clever. But we're going to come back to that. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to take it up about the CX-60 coming in with what I believe was the wrong engine.
Need advice? Visit changecars.co.za and click on the Keep It or Change Cars tab.
Welcome back. We were talking about the CX-60 and was it launched with the right or the wrong engine. You made a very valid point. You come in at a good price point where people say, if only. And then when
Yeah.
you bring the if only, then they want it. You also interestingly said there's a brand that did Mazda an incredible favor with their overpricing. Who was that? Porsche.
No. I'm referring to the new Honda CR-V. Lovely vehicle, yes, but it's priced almost exactly the same as the CX-60.
And it's immeasurably less of a car. You're not even comparing apples with apples there in terms of size. And I love the CR-V, by the way.
The only difference is the CR-V offers the 7-seat option, which the CX-60 doesn't. So unless you're desperate for that,
Sure.
it's also a lot of psychological things. If I told you you're going to spend R1,050,000 on an SUV that's got a CVT automatic, what would you say to me?
Not happening.
Right. Whereas the Mazda's got the 8-speed
Was that the right
automatic.
answer? Sorry.
Well, that's why I don't think they're going to sell CRVs, because
Yeah.
as good as their CVT is, it's nothing wrong with it. There's that stigma and that mental thing about CVTs.
Yeah.
R1,000,000 car with a CVT?
But now, two things I want to talk about. The CVT gearbox.
Yeah.
And gearboxes, I don't believe I'm the expert, but I drive cars and I either like it or I don't. Maybe I'm unique. I've got zero against the CVT gearbox. Where is the negativity towards the CVT coming from, Francisco?
So that to me goes back to journalists And sometimes I feel we spoke about Jeremy Clarkson earlier on. And I do feel, and I talk about this with a lot of the younger guys coming in, I said, take whatever you read and understood and learned from that and throw it all away. Because that whole thing of CVTs has been just taught. We've just kind of nurtured ourselves to say, I hate a CVT, I hate a CVT. And then that messaging comes across and it actually starts to mess with consumers' heads. Because the normal consumer won't actually even know. If you don't tell them, I've been caught out before where I actually drove a car and I thought it had an automatic and it turned out it has a CVT. And I actually said in my review, I said, I must be honest, I was wrong. Because yes, there were old school CVTs that were whiny back in the day, but they've come such a long way.
10 years ago, you could complain about a lot of the CVTs.
Yeah.
The only CVT that I drove that made a negative impression on me, and let me talk about many years ago. Do you remember a car called the Nissan Murano?
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful engine, 3.5 litre engine in a slightly lower state of tune. It was what was in the Nissan 350Z. Award-winning engine. Mated to a gearbox that was horrible. But BMW did it with their M5.
Yes.
Audi did it with their R-Tronic and their R8. Unless you know how to drive those cars, you won't like them. But other than that, I get in a CVT gearbox.
Yeah.
I just think it's a magnificent car.
Besides that, now we're talking public here, we're talking consumer.
Yeah.
90+% of buyers of cars today will not know or feel the difference.
Exactly.
Really. And I'm going to go a step further now. Really, I'm going to. Your typical mommy wagon, as in your crossover SUVs. Even more the case. And the majority of them now are coming with CVTs.
Yeah.
Efficient and, unless I'm mistaken, way cheaper to maintain.
Of course. Well, there's less parts that can break. You've got belts. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, or if I'm making it up, called "Let's talk chicken." Is there a saying called, or is it "Let's talk turkey"?
Turkey.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, well, let's talk chicken. 25 years ago, how many people had eaten rabbit? Did you know what rabbit was as a meat?
No, not that.
So we went to a function, and the host played a trick on us. He gave us chicken, physical chicken, but he told us it was rabbit. Everybody was saying, and this is what is key to your point, everybody was saying, it's incredible how similar it is, but you could actually taste it a little bit different. They were convinced that they were eating rabbit because they were told it's rabbit. Now, rabbit is a red meat. Chicken's a white meat. I don't know how they even got it right. However, chicken was well known. Rabbit was not a meat that was known at the time. So what did people believe? It's rabbit. You tell me it's rabbit, it's rabbit. But I remember people saying, including myself, you can see the similarities, but you can taste it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
CVT gearbox, do we give it the nod? Yes or no?
Generally, yes.
I give it the nod. I say yes.
Okay, let's talk marketing for a second. There's somebody...
Talk to him. He's here to marketing, not me.
There's somebody that just launched a new model very recently
Okay.
that doesn't have the CVT, and they are using it and should be using it a lot more in their marketing.
Okay.
Do you know who it is? Citroen C3 Aircross, the new one.
Okay.
6-speed torque converter automatic
Okay.
in a market segment that everybody is using CVTs. Now, I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's the different. It's the distinguishing factor. They are using it, but I think they should be using that a lot more.
Again, though, I wonder, consumer-wise, when we know we always go back to the consumer, and that's one thing I've loved about my first 3 weeks at All Things Motoring, is that we're very consumer-centric, and it's actually reset me as a journalist. I was actually speaking to Michael off camera to say, can I actually call myself a journalist anymore? Because things have changed so much, and do consumers actually worry about that? They want to just know manual or automatic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's, again, an interesting point. Sorry, Alan. You just said they want to know manual or automatic. Nobody needs to talk about semi-automatic. Nobody needs to talk about DSG. Nobody needs to talk about anything other than I'm changing the gear or it's changing for me. You take Suzuki with their AMT. What is it? What is it called?
It's
Now that-
AMT, yeah. No.
Now that, with all due respect,
yeah.
is a horrible, horrible transmission. And there you do need to talk about it. However, if we're talking all things Suzuki, we're not going to talk about it.
Okay. I can tell you now, comments I get on my content. I get a lot of people saying, why DCT? Why CVT? Where's a good old-fashioned torque converter? And I get it a lot. Maybe my audience is a slightly older audience. I don't know. I can't comment.
I think that is it.
But also regarding comments,
Yeah.
because we also talk about comments quite a bit, the people who comment a lot on the automotive platforms are petrol heads. And the petrol heads, of course, they're going to clump together, and it seems as if it's almost like how online, my wife and I always speak about how everyone is so upset. Everyone is upset about something. But then when you start to zero in on who everybody is, it's actually a small percentage of
Minuscule, yeah.
people. And that's the thing I find about us petrol heads is sometimes we're kind of our own worst enemy, even when it comes to car reviews, because then I end up doing it as well. I get into a car and then you start like fixating on small things that don't really matter. I remember when I drove that Alfa Tonale, that car, I was like, I just don't like how the hybrid system connects, and it just doesn't feel like everything feels disconcerted. And my wife absolutely loved it, and she is the target audience of that car. And sometimes I think to myself, as journalists, we need to step out of ourselves and say, the average consumer, what do they want? And that's how I actually want to pose some questions to Michael, because Michael, I love it. He's very conservative in terms of his knowledge, because this is a man who's now done this for 30 odd years, buying, selling, 33 years. 33
Max
years.
Verstappen, you and me have got something in common.
Exactly that. And what I love is that, speaking to somebody who deals with customers on a daily basis, you are the perfect person to find out what does a customer want? What are customers' concerns? What are their true concerns? Because from a journalist perspective, we're very shielded. We're dealing with fancy launches, we're dealing with the latest of cars, but we kind of become disconnected to the consumer, and then our opinions end up getting shaped and formed based on what the brand wants, but the consumer is actually the most important person out there. So a little bit of tips and tricks for consumers. What's a common question you get when people are looking to buy a car?
So one of the products that we've got is Ask Mikey. You can call me Mike. I used to be called Mikey when I was a kid. And every single day we get between 5 and 10 questions. 3 important categories: future resale value, parts availability, and reliability or issues. So when it comes to issues, we get 5 to 10 questions a day. How many do you think we get about Toyota?
0.
Less than 0.
I'll always say it's a round number.
Yeah.
One of the questions that we're getting regularly, and I always answer it as follows. And before I tell you which brand it is, the fact that you are asking the question, and I don't say it disrespectfully, means you've heard about it, you've read about it, people are speaking about it. If people are speaking about the unreliability of an engine, why are they talking about it? Because it's actually happened.
Well, they know someone that's happened.
Which engine in South Africa in particular is giving a lot of problems? Which manufacturer today has got a range of engines that are giving trouble? Can you let him? I'll throw him under the bus.
You're throwing me under the bus. I've got a feeling you are talking about the Ford 2-litre bi-turbo.
I actually thought the same thing.
You're 2 for 2, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Now again, go back one step. When I said to you, if a customer is asking that, it's not because he heard it randomly, he's hearing it regularly. If it was once off, anything can happen. 25-year-olds can die of a heart attack, but as a general rule, it's older people that die of a heart attack. The fact that they ask about that question, it is the Ford. The second component is future resale value. What is resale value about? If I say to you, and I'm not throwing the question back at you, how is resale value of a vehicle determined? What would you say it is?
I would say it's based on sales and popularity, it's supply and demand.
It's absolutely nothing more than supply and demand. You're selling 10,000 polos, new, in whatever period of time. People want polos second-hand as well. I can't afford new, so when it comes into the market at a price that I believe I can afford, I want it. And because everybody wants it, buy a new polo, and you've got a fantastic resale value. You spoke about the Citroen, excellent car. But how in demand are Citroens or Peugeots or Alfa Romeos? So as a consequence, what will happen to the resale value of a car that's not in demand? Is the resale value low because that car is bad? No. It just hasn't taken off. You wanting to chomp at the bit on something
You
there.
sent me a question a day or two back. A gentleman who wrote into you asking between the Toyota Corolla Cross and the Cherry Tiggo. And he made 2
Haval Jolion, he actually asked about.
Okay,
Correct.
Haval Jolion, sorry. And he made 2 comments. He said the one was the Jolions obviously got way more kit and way more spec and drives, I think he kind of was hinting nicer
Better.
drive.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he said, but resale value. And my answer to you was, if he's questioning resale value, buy the Toyota.
Of course.
And nothing against the Jolion.
Yeah.
So just a bit of consumer advice. If resale value is important to you, and at face value it should be important to you, I ask you one question. How long are you going to keep the car for? If you're going to keep the car for 2 to 3 years, you've got to buy the top-selling mainstream brand. You've got to go for your Toyota. If, however, you say, this is going to be one of my last cars, I'm in my late 50s, early 50s, or mid-60s, just as an example, and you're going to keep that car for 8 or 9 or 10 years, then, as you can imagine, resale value becomes irrelevant. So how do you choose the right car? Go look at the two, and which one talks to you more? Which one do you like the look of? Which one do you like the drive of? Which one do you like the tech of? Would you agree with me?
Definitely. Because that's the one thing that catches a lot of people out. And I know we spoke about Volvo earlier. Volvo is one of the cars, because I used to get that question, should I buy a Volvo, shouldn't I buy a Volvo? I said, you can buy a Volvo all day long, but just know that when you want to get rid of your Volvo, that's when things start to get very tricky. And we forget that a lot of people finance their vehicles. And now it becomes very difficult to get out of that car. And people are impatient. I mean, I'm sure you can tell us, what would you actually say is the average cycle that people keep cars nowadays?
24 to 36 months.
Look at that, eh?
And you would think in theory it would be longer. A person finances his car for 5, 6 or 7 years. So literally 60, 72, 84 months. The reality is he knows upfront he's not going to keep it for close to that. So now I finance a car for 84 months. I've reduced my payments massively because those extra 2 years really add a lot of cushion for you. However, in the first 2 years, you've paid off very, very little on that car. You don't have a Toyota. You don't have a top-selling car. You've bought yourself something like a Citroen, a Peugeot. You paid 400,000 Rand. After 2 years, you owe 360,000 Rand on that car. Is your car going to be worth close to that? Everything can be predicted. You know, Nostradamus was fantastic at predicting the future. Today, we've just got analytics.
Looking to buy a new or used car? Visit changecars.co.za.
Mike, before you go on, I want to just throw one other point regarding choosing that car. I always say to people, if you're looking, whether it's price, whether it's whatever, there are always 2 or 3 good choices. And I could never tell you which one of those ones. So I always say, go and drive all 3 back to back. One of them, the seat may just adjust better for you. One of them, and I have a problem here, which you don't have.
Height.
Well, lack thereof. Touchscreens. There are a lot of cars where I can't comfortably reach the touchscreen when I'm sitting in my perfect driving position.
Interesting.
I've got to lean to get to the touchscreen. Now, that could be a buying decision. It could be the factor that changes my mind.
No question.
And I bet you very few people have ever thought of that. But when you get in the
that could be a journalist mind speaking.
Go like that, please. Yeah, no, I can see the problem.
But that, I'm saying, in my decision making, could be the deal breaker.
But fundamentally, drive the car, sit in the car.
Yeah.
If it talks to you, you are buying the right car. But talking about buying the right car, and it's always about the resale value. A point that I would love to raise. When you buy a car, you more or less know how long you're going to keep it for. Not a theory, but rather a practice. I might keep it for 4 to 5 years, but I might also sell it after 2 to 3. Whatever your car is that you buy it over 5 years, let's use a figure of 400,000 Rand. Your payment is going to be just on 9,600 Rand, as near as makes no difference. You can ask the bank, Westbank, MSC, whoever it is, for an amortization schedule up front. So I buy the car over 60 months. After 59 months, I've paid off nothing. I owe the exact same. Why? Because the first month's installment does nothing. But after 24 months, so now 36 months to go, they will be able to tell you, based on more or less the same interest rate, your car was 400,000 new, your settlement after 36 months is going to be 246,000 Rand. Just a bit of a thumb suck. Do yourself a favor. Phone your local dealer and say, I've got a 2021 of the same car that you're looking to buy. It's got 50,000 Ks or whatever the prediction will be. What will you give me for it? They're going to tell you one of two things. Sorry, Mr. Customer, at the moment, we're just oversupplied with these vehicles. We're not buying it. Then you know you cannot touch that manufacturer. Or they'll say to you, oh, we'd absolutely love to buy it. What is your settlement? And you give them a more or less guesstimate settlement. See the appetite that they wish to apply to that. If they wish to buy it, buy that car. But you go buy a non-mainstream brand. I often talk about non-mainstream. And after 36 months, you owe far more than what that car is worth. You're dead in the water. Would you agree with me on that?
Definitely. And then it starts to spiral. And I know it's a topic that you've talked about before, because we know that the dealers know that certain customers don't know certain information. And that's when our loading starts to happen, because people want to get out of their vehicles. And that this fast new generation of people just wanting to get out of cars, eventually the knock-on effect is huge.
It should be absolutely criminal to load a vehicle. So think about what the term loading means. I come in, I want to change my car. My car that I'm looking to sell has a settlement to the bank of 255,000, but the dealership's only offering me 195. I need to load that car by 60,000 rand. I'm loading that 60,000 rand over a 5-year period. 60,000 plus interest. So that 60,000 is actually 90,000 rand. It is a recipe for success or disaster. If you're Jamie Oliver and it was a cookbook, he would tell you, don't do it. So where does the success come in? For the dealership that's selling it to you. They're the only one that's winning. Tell them you heard it from Mike at All Things Motoring. Don't do it.
Vicious circle as well. Once you get onto that hamster wheel, or whatever you want to call it, you are. When do you ever get off it?
You can't. I've always loved that term, a hamster wheel, because when you look at a hamster on a wheel, he works, but he goes nowhere. You're paying off your car, but you're going nowhere. In fact, you're going backwards. You're getting into debt. So it's time for another break to hear from our sponsor. And the sponsor is Change Cars. And then when we come back, Francisco, I can see you chomping at the bit.
Very much so.
Awesome.
Very much so.
See you after the break.
Need advice? Visit changecars.co.za and click on the Keep It or Change Cars tab.
Welcome back. So, Francisco, one of the things that you love to chat about is the mindset of a buyer. And is the mindset right? Is the mindset wrong? Do they rush? What are you thinking?
So in my personal experience, and it's funny, even though we work within the space, when you're buying a vehicle, and we've bought and sold a couple cars, you're kind of excited, you know, you find this thing that you want, and lo and behold, the dealer's going to start putting pressure on you, and they're going to try to get you in a situation where you might feel a little bit uncomfortable. And for me, I've actually had to stop myself and say, let me just breathe and think about this, because for a lot of first-time buyers, we don't want to take away that joy from them, but it's just about keeping that cool head. So what advice would you give to first-time buyers who are in a predicament where now the dealer's saying, no, I've only got one of these, or I've only got two of these, are you going to grab it? I've got another customer waiting, trying to put you in a corner.
If you want to irritate me in any facet of life, it's put me under pressure. I've got a saying, and I'll repeat it on air. There's no such thing as a good salesman. It's only a bad product. If you're a good salesman, you're selling a bad product. A good product will always sell itself. So I'll give you that example where you say, you know, Francisco, there's another buyer interested in this. Well, good luck to you, Mr. Salesman. Either way, you're going to sell the car. Yeah. The moment you feel under pressure, it's like a child. If you have to hide something from your parents, you know it's wrong. If you are forced to make a decision that is out of your comfort zone, would you agree with me, Alan?
Totally.
It's wrong. I, as a salesperson, will always say, Francisco, let me tell you, what you're looking for is not rare. It's not a needle in a haystack. A Suzuki Swift, a Toyota Corolla, a Honda CR-V. There are plenty of these in South Africa. You're not looking for a 1965 Jaguar. Take your time. And talking about taking your time, when you look at a car, we're talking about specifically second-hand. My advice, go onto the internet. You're looking for a 2020 Polo. The first one you see is a 2020 Polo with 68,000 kilos for 240,000 rand. Make a mental note. I've got a 4-year-old Polo, 68,000 kilos, 220,000 rand. Keep looking, 2 or 3 days. Oh my word. Here's a 2021 from a quality dealer, 57,000 kilos, and it's only 225. Or here's one a year older, but it's got 37,000 kilos. So always have a base point as your reference. You buy any car that you see, the first car being your choice. Your chance of getting it right is fair. Your chance of getting it wrong is also fair. So we've all heard the term 50-50. I've got one saying about 50-50. If you do it twice, you'll get it wrong once. Now, why would I want to take the risk of getting it wrong and I'm in trouble, or getting it right and, well done, Mike, you did well? So what do? You eliminate it. So you eliminate any risk. What was the reason it would be 50-50? You don't know the previous owner? Say to the dealer, who was the previous owner? It was a car rental vehicle? Don't do it.
Yeah.
Would you ever buy a car rental vehicle?
No. Too many drivers, too many. The maintenance of it all, it just becomes tricky.
I did once. A 1-year-old
Yeah.
ex-Avis car.
How'd it go?
I only did it once.
There we go.
So one of the reasons I say to anybody listening or watching not to buy an ex-rental car, it's very, very simple. A rental car needs to be kept in a reasonably good condition at all times. And why I say reasonably good, I've gone to rent cars and there's scuffs on the mag wheels or there's a little dent on the car. But most often, that dent needs to be fixed. And your average renter is getting little dents on a car. So a rental car that's 1 or 2 years old, how many times has that car been to a panel beater for a quick spray job?
Yeah.
It doesn't go, that car can't be out of action for 7 days. It's quick. Do not buy a rental car.
There's one rental car in history that breaks everything you've just said. Do you know it?
Toyota Corolla.
No. The 1965 Ford Mustang Hertz Special. Do you know about that one?
1965. There we go again. Do tell us, what year were you born? 1958?
60.
60.
Yeah.
Sure.
Tell us
Okay.
about the 65 Hertz Special.
1965, Mustang had just taken off. You know the legend. Anyway, they'd been on the market for nearly a year. Hertz had this
With a
brainwave.
legendary 4-cylinder engine.
Oh, yeah.
No, it was the V8s.
Was it
The
V8?
original V8s. Yeah.
I'm joking. That's why I said the
Yeah.
legendary.
Oh, yeah.
That was Mustang 2. Hertz had this brainwave. They ordered, I think it was 200 or 300 cars, but I speak under correction there. Had a special badge, the H as well, that they would buy in a batch of these. This was in the States, obviously, and you could hire a Mustang. And it would be like, the thing to do. Until they discovered that guys were coming in on Friday, hiring the car, and taking it racing on Saturday,
Oh, my word.
and returning it on Monday,
Wow.
hammered. So they pulled this program very quickly. But the weird part is, if you can find one of those original ones, if it still exists, last figure I heard, and this was a while back, was $1 million.
Wow. So where's the best place to look? What are the 2 most famous American racing circuits? Let's see if you know. There's 2 that are absolute standout.
Laguna Seca?
Absolutely. I promise you,
yeah,
Laguna Seca,
Laguna-
with
yeah.
a corkscrew
Yep,
in
yep.
California. And the second one?
Indianapolis.
Okay.
I like to believe that I work with the best in the industry. It's just been proven. Absolute truth, Laguna Seca and Indianapolis 500.
Yeah.
What do you think of the left turns at Indy 500?
I mean, just everything
I
about
said,
it.
what do you think of the left turns?
There aren't any.
That's exactly it. So he knows
I like that. I like that.
Going to come back to that in a second, but that's lovely. Okay, but what do you know about Laguna Seca as a matter of interest? What made you say? I promise you, but I give you my word that corkscrew. You know that you don't understand. If you said to me any circuit in the world,
Yeah.
I don't want to go to Monaco. I don't want to go to Monza. I don't want to go to Silverstone. I don't want to go to the A1 ring. I want to go to Laguna Seca
Seca.
and see that corkscrew. Have you seen the motorbikes do that?
I haven't seen the motorbikes.
The
do it.
MotoGPs raced at Laguna Seca.
Oh, my word.
Can
Crazy.
you imagine? But you know about the corkscrew.
Yeah.
A little bit, not a lot.
It's like
Yeah.
PlayStation is actually where I know it from. Believe it or not, Gran Turismo. As kids, we'd be playing, and then you just
Amazing.
that's the thing. Yeah.
So if you're looking for a 1965 Mustang and you can't find one, try Laguna Seca, try Indianapolis, maybe the pace car.
Looking to buy a new or used car? Visit changecars.co.za.
Alan, you've been talking about the 1960s. In the 1960s, there was no electric cars. In the 1970s and 1980s, there was definitely no mainstream electric cars.
Yeah.
But you've got a smile on your face because you've done something very different with an electric vehicle. Tell us about that.
Okay. I did, you know me well enough. I've got to do the different, I've got to do the odd. So I was invited to drive an electric delivery vehicle, and a vehicle that's designed for, and they gave me this term, last mile delivery. In other words, very short distances.
Okay.
Okay.
So they have done their homework, and courier services, etc., etc.
Now, when we say they, you talk about the brand that is
The brand
DFSK.
that are bringing DFSK, in fact, Enviro Auto,
Right.
who are bringing in the electric versions of DFSK. So what they've done their research and their homework, and they've identified many customers who do, let's say, 150 odd kilometers a day
Okay.
in a vehicle. So we took a van that has a range in that level, let's call it that, and we drove it down to Durban, which is 600 plus kilometers.
I was not invited, but if I was, I would have had to decline.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
proper range anxiety that you're going to deal
Yeah,
with.
right, range anxiety.
Yeah.
You don't want to know.
Oh, man.
But it was done for a couple of reasons. First of all, to prove it can be done. Secondly, to show that the grid is actually quite good,
Okay.
a modern grid. And thirdly, we actually went to go and fetch a vehicle that had just landed off the ship,
Okay.
which was the first 1.6 ton bakkie, fully electric.
That is
And
incredible.
we drove, instead of having it transported back, the idea was we drive it back. So we drove back with two vehicles.
Now, one of the things I'm on record as saying, I mean, we've often heard the term petrol head, never heard the term diesel head, so you're never going to call me an electric head. Personally,
Yeah.
on the record, I do not like and will never like an electric vehicle. For passenger use, it's challenging. We all know it's always about the range. The cost of ownership, or shall I say the cost of purchase, is always a challenge. Your feeling regarding an electric vehicle for commercial use. You've driven it down to Durban, so you will have an opinion.
Yeah.
But before I get your opinion, I want to hear a second opinion.
So commercial use, I think, is tricky because I feel that a lot of these brands have been there's a lot of pressure on them for them to kind of, climate change and all that. And I understand that side of things. But at the same time, longevity-wise, I think, those kind of cars do a lot of mileage. And, those 8-year, 10-year batteries and all that. I just think, I don't know. To me, if I was a fleet owner, I would be very wary about running an electric fleet. Passenger car, if you've got a second vehicle that's going to do the rounds, a little electric mini, run around Parkhurst, perfect. That's fine. For consumer use, it's fine. I don't know. I know that there's like a few of these companies now that have started using the electric cars, and kudos to them. But I mean, I'm still skeptical. Put it that way.
Okay, can I reply to this? Because there are a few points I'll make. The first thing is, a lot of the international companies in South Africa are under instruction from head office to cut their CO2 output environment. So there's already pressure to go towards electric. And we're talking, as I say, European, whatever, international companies. So there's already becoming a market for these. Now, if you are one of those companies, not only are you going to look at your vehicles, but a lot of them have gone solar or alternative power sources. Now, you combine those two. You take your little electric van and you do, as long as you can manage the range on a daily basis, you now, when your warehouse closes at night, you plug in your electric vehicle on your batteries that have been charged by solar.
Okay.
And they have come up with a figure, and I'm using their numbers here, that you can run that little van, which has got a payload of about 600 kilos, so it's plenty for local deliveries,
Yeah.
on about 30 cents a kilometer.
Interesting.
Now, can I just go further? Our trip to Durban. So we did 3 legs, can I call
Can
it?
I just interrupt you quickly?
Yeah.
That is one of the best, most eloquent, lucid, intelligent outlines you've ever done. What I'd like to say to the audience is if you're looking for a half-ton bakkie, look at a Nissan NP200 1.5 diesel. And if you're looking at a 1-ton bakkie, look at a Ford Ranger or Toyota Hilux. Everything he said, just disregard it, even though he would like to finish. Please go further.
We did some sums for the trip. And if you took your average bakkie, 10 litres per 100, is that fair? it would have been at least 5,000 Rand in fuel for 3 legs, 1,800 kilometers. Okay? We were using public chargers, and discussion for another day about public chargers, all right? That's a whole other story. And they charge premium price to charge. They're charging up to R7.80 per kilowatt hour.
Sure.
And we used about 2,500 Rand electricity. So it was already half.
What you're trying to say in a different way that you fully agree with me.
No, I totally disagree with you for
You
once,
will-
Mike.
You will never, ever personally convince me. And again, I always do, jokes aside, respect everybody's opinion. You will never convince me in South Africa, in particular, with so many variables, the challenges of our infrastructure, that it will ever make sense to take that risk as a business into the unknown. Power supply not available. I'm not talking about power supply, Eskom. Those jokes are over. Eskom, well done to you. You're doing a very good job. 69 days or whatever it is post-election without load shedding.
Yeah.
Yourself, simple yes or no for a business, electric or no electric.
To me, it's a no, purely based on the fact that the stresses I would have as that fleet manager, knowing that my driver is stuck charging, he could get hijacked. There's a lot of things. And I get it in Europe, maybe from a crime and safety perspective, but it's just there's so much stress that comes with running a business already. I'd rather pay the extra 2.5K.
Absolutely.
And just give me fuel. Yeah.
Hang on. I agree with you.
Alan, we live in a
totally.
democracy. 2-1.
Yeah. No, but
Means-
can I just...
We live in a democracy. And as the host of All Things Motoring, Change Cars, Keep It or Change Cars podcast, I am overriding our co-host. But because you're a nice guy, I'll give you 30 seconds starting
Right.
now.
Totally stupid driving it down to Durban and back. No. Local delivery, if you know your range, you know your journey, and you have the solar available, etc., it works.
Cape Town's been raining for the last 3 weeks.
There's a very small niche for which it makes sense. That's
Alan's story, and he's sticking to it. But that brings us to the end of an incredible podcast. Francisco, having you in Joburg, having you on the team, to say it's a privilege, to say it's a pleasure is an understatement. Alan, other than your lack of knowledge on small electric vehicles, it is an absolute privilege and pleasure to work with you. Till the next episode, hosted by Nikki and Alan. Gentlemen, thank you for a wonderful show.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.